Okay, so let's go. Okay, so I'm here with John, the co-founder from Bullet. John is actually the original founder of Bullet. There he is there, hiding in the darkness up in Alaska somewhere. And we're going to ask John, from his point of view, you've read a bit about my point of view on how the kind of breakup happened, because it was kind of like a breakup, and how we kind of got through that and we got out of it. And then I thought it'd be a good time to ask John some of those questions, because maybe I have a very different idea what happened to what John thinks what happened. So this is actually probably the only proper time we've kind of probably talked about it, because kind of when it happened, we just accepted it and then we kind of just moved on. Wasn't that kind of it?
I think so. This is probably the first time we've done a post-mortem of it, if you will, where we decide to sit down and go over, well, how did it happen? What were the steps? You know, I think we'll get into it a bit more in the conversation, but probably from my point of view, if we'd had discussions a bit more as we were going through it, it wouldn't have happened the way it did, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not in Alaska, I'm in Cork. It's just a very grey day.
Yeah, that's Ireland 101.
Yeah,
exactly, yeah. Oh, we probably have our sunglasses on outside as well.
Yeah, it's very bright outside, yeah.
So tell us this. So let's kind of run, I suppose, chronologically through it, because that's probably the easiest way to kind of structure this. So when did you kind of start? So we were, just background for people, it's about 8 years old, Bullet now, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. So about 2010, I think. So you're sick of hearing the story about how I had an accountant and they weren't any good. And I thought, well, how hard can this stuff be? You know, surely it's just money in minus money out is equal to profit with some taxes thrown in.
Yeah.
And a lot of the software that I'd seen at the time was very complicated. It expected you to be the accountant.
Yeah.
So I thought there has to be a better way, right? You know, so I guess that was the genesis of it. I think I initially did like a bit of prototyping. I was put in contact with you because you were in a kind of a similar space.
That's right.
I think after the first few chats, it was clear that we got on really well, and I thought that the kind of the different things that we brought to the table were quite. We felt like we worked well together, which we did.
Yeah.
The Bullet product that we have today, which I'm very proud of, that would never have been the product it was without you, you know. So I felt that we worked really well together in kind of creating that product, making it easy to use, getting people excited about it, you know. So I guess but the genesis of it was just I got stiffed by an accountant and thought there must be a better way to do this, you know.
Yeah. Also, just the skill set I added to it was I am the dumb one in the partnership, so I dumbed everything down. So there was like this litmus test where pretty much my role was not to learn anything about accounts, which suited me fine. And then John would come to me and he'd go, so these are the kind of legal limits we need to ask. And then I'd design these screens, which would create like a ferocious amount of re-engineering. And I'd go, yeah, that makes sense in my head. And then we'd have these debates about, you know, what was free money and what wasn't free money and how things would be classed. And so my stupidity was winning the whole time, and that was pretty much my skill set in the whole thing.
That was one of the things I thought that was really exciting, though, because it was a traditionally very boring area, you know, and it felt like we were creating something new, you know, something a way to do all these boring things that was more intuitive, that nobody had really people weren't doing up to, you know, at that time. So. It was very exciting, you know. We really felt, you know, like the product we created, people love it, you know.
Yeah.
So, so I thought we worked really well together, you know.
Yeah. And it was also at the time it was it was pretty cutting edge, you know. I mean, nobody was, UI was just about kind of being mentioned, you know. UX was kind of just, it was all very fringy and new. And
if you typed in UX at that stage, people thought it was a typo, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There was no real. Well, there was, but it was very fringe. You know, like everybody just was UI, not necessarily user experience. You know, so I think that's you brought that a lot to the table. Like how does this website make me feel? How do I know what I'm even supposed to be doing? You know, that especially in accounts, people are very stressed about accounts. So you want to make it very clear and very easy for people to use and give them a warm feeling as they're using it, that, you know, this thing is helping me to do what I need to do.
Exactly. And using things like pub talk and stuff. And a lot of it wasn't very clever stuff, you know. It was just dumbifying it down. You know, it was just removing assumptions. I think that's the kind of core thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we had, I mean, it was almost perfect in its trajectory. You know, we had two good co-founders. They got on really well. They kind of both, without even kind of talking about what we wanted to do, which is kind of everything in this article I say you shouldn't do. But again, I think this was kind of like a rare match, you know. And we were pretty pumped, and we had the same kind of work ethic, which is usually where you get a lot of founders sparking off one another. I remember the first time we kind of decided we'd go into business, I think we were like designing screens like at 11 o'clock that night, you know. And that kind of intensity continued on, you know. When I moved over to London for the summer, I remember balmy night, not being able to sleep and sparking up the computer to work on screens, and there you were, your Skype green light was on, and then we started working on problems and stuff like that. So that kind of continued on, and the product got good, and then we wrestled a lot then. I think that was kind of the biggest, if you'd like, obstacle we had in the business was getting the product out. We definitely discovered we started in the wrong country. We started in the Irish market with tons of accounting or tax automation done. That took a long time to get out. We wanted to kind of do a kind of a semi word of mouth marketing thing where the product would sell itself, because it was a freemium product. You're meant to get this kind of word of mouth with it, which we were definitely getting, but I think we couldn't amplify it in Ireland because we don't really have an influencer network that you can target, and all the social media platforms kind of come from the US down. So I suspect, would you say that was kind of the biggest bull bear, and trying to get content that we could write that would engage people, that would work for search? And
yeah, you know, because there's like, certainly in Ireland, there's one very obvious kind of big market leader in this particular software area, and all the traditional media, like they just bought all of that, like, you know, things like Google AdWords or Facebook ads or even radio campaigns or something like that. The traditional marketing like silos were kind of sewn up by this particular company. So, and you needed a huge amount of money to do that anyway. So that wasn't something that we had. We wanted to, a bit like the product, we wanted to market smarter, you know. But like we've said before, people need to do accounts. They're not necessarily interested in accounts. So coming up with engaging content to kind of get out there word of mouth, that was one of the real difficulties I would say that we had, you know. Because it's very, you know, everybody needs to do it, but it's hard to make people excited about accounts sometimes, you know. So trying to, that was something that I struggled with, you know, because like you said, you know, the product was something that we could do, and it was entirely under our control. But obviously when you're trying to engage other people and get the word out there and stuff like that, that's a lot more out of your control. There's things that you can do, but you can't make people come and look at your blog or at your tweets or these sorts of things, you know. So that's kind of where, for me, I think the shift, once we had the product kind of done, when we moved over into that mode of, like you say, in Ireland, it's very difficult to get out there because it's real traditional media space, very small influencer market, you know, so very difficult to get the word out there. And I think that's, like, from my point of view, that's when some of the frustration started to happen with the business, that we were putting huge amounts of effort in, but not necessarily getting what I would have considered the
reward,
payback, the reward for all that work that we were putting in, you know.
And there didn't seem to be anything obvious either.
I don't think so.
That was the thing,
like everything that we were doing felt right. Like we had, you know, it was, I think it's just that the initial hook, like even just getting people to the content could be quite difficult, you know, because it's a space, like when people hear the word accounts, they're just initially going, oh, you know, but it's something that people have to do. So, you know, trying to make it more interesting. And there's the thing I thought that we thought was surprising. We talk a lot about the difference between like what's free money and tax-free money and all these sorts of things. And there's lots of really good tax incentives in Ireland, let's say. So we would write some blog posts about, you know, you can just give yourself €250.
Get a free sales guy.
All these sorts of things about, you know, clever ways that you could make the tax system work for you, that you could get that money and make it more useful. And it did have a certain amount of engagement, but not necessarily what I would have considered it should have had, you know?
We often said after it, we should have just built a marketing tool, because you can literally just write any crap and people will like buy into it straight away.
And that's the thing, you know. And once we had the product to a certain stage as well, there was very little, like, we could innovate a bit, but because you're constrained that your product has to adhere to the general accounting principles and you know the particular rules of the country that you're that you're doing your business in, we couldn't just come up with a new way of doing tax, let's say, because you know it's mandated by the government. So there was, once we got the product to a certain stage, it was very hard to become more inventive. There were things that we just had to stick with, you know. So those two kind of things coupling together made it a little bit more frustrating than it had been before, you know. Everything was new. We were trying out new things, but once the business got to a certain stage, I think that's when, for me, some of the excitement went away, because I couldn't change it in the way that I used to, you know.
Yeah, I think, and I remember, I kind of, in my head, I kind of think that the shift happened a bit. So John's partner, Louise, was a developer and she wanted a contract in. So she came in and worked, and John took a step out, which was perfect. And that kind of took the risk out of having one technical co-founder. Like if you're raising money, there's almost insurance policies you take out on the founders, because if one of them goes, it kills the business. So we were okay about that. But I felt, did that compound it because you were a little more detached? I kind of felt, so John kind of worked core on product, and then Louise worked on the product, and then John kind of worked more on the growth stuff. That's kind of the feeling I got, which is kind of real hacky, scrapey kind of development that I knew you weren't into. And you kept on saying, my brain doesn't work that way, you know. So one of the testaments to Bullet is it is almost like bug free, and it has like, nearly a million lines of code in it. So build a runway, he'll land a jumbo jet on it. But if you want like some hacky runway that goes up the side of a mountain in Uganda, you probably wouldn't enjoy building that runway as much as you'd.
I mean, the thing about
what do you think?
Yeah, the thing about the growth stuff is you want to iterate on it really quickly, right? Because it's important that you find out what's going to work for you really quickly. And if something isn't going to work, you want to ditch it so that you can go on to the next thing and make sure that you're not spending effort on things that aren't growing the business, aren't adding value to it. But that's, from a technical point of view, that like I like writing good solid software, so that the kind of the quick turnaround time of hacking is of trying to get some of the growth stuff out there. I enjoyed it, but it wouldn't be my preferred way of doing stuff, you know. I like something, I'm a big fan of something I can really get my teeth into. But we tried a lot of those various different things. I mean, when you're trying certain growth campaigns, I mean, people like Facebook and Twitter, and they know people are using the tools as marketing tools. That's why they have, like, you know, marketing things to it, advertising, you know. But if you don't want to go down that marketing route, sometimes they make it a bit more difficult for you to try and do any of the growth stuff on their platforms. They specifically have like rate limiting and all these sorts of things, so you have to be a bit more inventive if you're, you know, because, you know, like the classic Twitter feed, you know, people's Twitter feeds are just, you know, you post a message in that, and if the people aren't looking at their screen at the time you post that message, it is gone, right? So you want to post it a good few times to try and make sure that people have the best chance of seeing it. But Twitter have limits on that sort of thing, you know, that you can't just be posting endless amounts of stuff in an automated fashion, you know. So all those sorts of things. It was interesting to try and, you know, work in the constraints of some of those tools, but still have like interesting growth ideas. Coming up with the ideas was very interesting. Implementing them, but, you know, there was some frustration about trying to make it work and make it happen, you know. Because
and most of the time, I think for every 10 you do, you might get some success out of one. Or 1 in 20, you know, and that's why you need the fast iteration. But it's like a lot of work just gets binned.
That's the thing. And I think I was probably, you know, I was putting too much work into the code for how long it was going to stay. It would be much better to just, you know, hack anything together, and then the stuff that works, then you can make it better, you know. But I think I wasn't coming from that point of view, especially, you know, coming from the accounting product that we have. You can't just be hacking stuff up there and see if it works. This is people's money. So you need to be, you know, you have to make sure everything is really well tested, the code quality is very high, that you have a huge amount of confidence in it, you know. And like, we run our own business on it as well, right? You know, you make sure that it's not going to break coming out with the wrong number or something like that, so you put a lot of effort and time into making sure that it works the right way. Whereas when you come to some of the growth stuff, that's completely the opposite, right? It's just throwaway work. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter so much, because it's, you're not submitting tax returns with the growth code, so I think that kind of paradigm shift I missed a little when I went into the growth thing. So we probably didn't do enough iterations, plus it was some of the tools made it a bit more difficult, a lot of Google Analytics stuff started disappearing behind. It wouldn't tell you the keywords unless doing advertising on that keyword. A lot of tools that you could use for growth, I think they started to cotton on to the fact that people were using them and started to close down a lot of those routes. So it was much harder to kind of extract the information you wanted out of some of those as well, but definitely that moving into the growth was kind of more away from core product, more into the growth of the business. And I think, again, that's not my key expertise area. And when you put a lot of work into these things and they don't take off the way that you want them to, like 1 in 10, it can kind of get you down a bit. You're kind of thinking, well, that was really good. Like some of the campaigns we did, I thought were really clever, and I was really surprised that they didn't get more traction. So that can be very disheartening.
Was that the kind of start of it for you? Like, were you kind of thinking? Because I know you were coming up to that, you were kind of getting a bit bored of writing the product, and kind of at the time I thought the change will be good for you, because it's something very different, Now I knew it was a little hacky and I knew that wasn't what you liked. And I knew that kind of hacky style of development was kind of what you've unprogrammed yourself to think like, When you initially went into that, were you thinking this is great, something fresh, something new? Louise can work on the product that I've been working on for like 5 years.
Yeah,
and then it kind of went pear-shaped.
It was something different to do, and it was in the area that I think we knew. Look, we knew we had a good product, So it was time to try and grow the business, So I knew, look, that's where we need some of the effort, right? The business has to grow. So it wasn't so much the work. I think it was the frustration that we were putting in, especially some of the, we did a few Twitter campaigns that I thought were really, really clever.
Yeah.
And they didn't have the traction that I expected them to have. And I think it was the reaction to the campaigns that was kind of more disheartening. It really started to feel like I wasn't having impact in the business. And that's very frustrating. It's very frustrating when you're putting in lots of work and you feel like you're not having the impact, especially given previously, when you're working just on product, it's very easy to have an impact. You change,
so tangible.
That's it,
Yeah.
But when you're trying to make the business grow and it's not growing the way you want it to, it's very frustrating,
Yeah. And I think with product, anytime it gets a little intangible, like why aren't people using this or why are they using it the wrong way? You can user test it pretty quick. And then you go, or you can even just ask 3 people in the office and you'll have like something stupid like the comma in the wrong place and it changes the way the copy's read, or there's too much copy. And that's about as fuzzy as product gets, And, but I think what marketing is like 90% that, if even more, and then 1% testing.
I guess. Yeah, a lot of what we were trying to do, I guess, a lot of it was experimenting, right? Because we didn't have a huge marketing war chest that we could just throw money at the traditional methods.
Yeah.
So we were trying to be a bit more clever around some of those things, So I think that's, it's like when you're trying to experiment and it's like anything, right? You're really engaged with something, you're really positive, and if it doesn't work, it's a real blow, So, and after a few of those, it I guess the accumulation of it, it started to feel, and plus then we couldn't innovate there were certainly some innovation after I left. Louise did a lot of good work.
Yeah.
But just deciding
stick that in
a whole new way of doing stuff, or we'd be thinking, oh, this, we don't like how this particular side of the product works, but you couldn't change it because that's the way it has to work, you know.
Yeah, of course.
So it was kind of frustrations from both sides, that there was, you know, you were kind of limited in what you could do on the product side.
Yeah.
And the stuff we were doing on the growth side wasn't having the impact I was hoping it would have. You know, so the frustrations from both sides, I guess it just started to grow, you know.
Yeah. And probably started to feed one another. So you'd go, so because the product was pretty much kind of built at that stage. And so I suspect you were getting frustrated with the results from the marketing stuff after kind of getting very excited about how clever that was. And then you'd go to work on something on the product and go, God, I wish there was a better way we could do it, but we actually can't, because you actually need all of this information. Because we're a proper accounting product. We're not a accounting product that, you know, just does invoices.
That's it. You know, like we said at the beginning, it was the idea. This wasn't to be a flashier version of what was already there. It was to be a more useful version, so that people that didn't have a huge amount of accounting experience would just be able to use it. That it wasn't asking questions that they didn't understand. Yeah. But yeah, at a certain point, it felt like there was only so much you could do, and it started to feel really frustrating, you know, because it just wasn't having the impact that we wanted it to have, you know. And they definitely started to feed each other, because before, you know, you're always trying to grow the product, but if it was ever frustrating or something, you could go back to the product and go, oh well, this area here will make that a little better, you know. There was always something you could do, and you always felt like you were having an impact. But once that kind of settled down and there was kind of less to do, that's, you know, there was less of a release of just going, oh well, I'll just do this thing, make me feel a bit better, and I'll get back onto this, you know. There was kind of less of that, you know.
And tell us this, so would be, so let's say you're out about a year now, so was that about a year prior to that? Was that around the time kind of?
I think it would have been, and I think one of the things you can kind of fool yourself, right? You know, because you nearly don't want to acknowledge that you're getting disheartened, right?
Yeah, of course.
It's kind of, you feel like, oh well, I'm failing, you know. And so you're kind of trying to fool yourself about it. And I think that's why I didn't talk to you about it, because it's like you kind of don't want to admit it, you know. But
that's real.
That was a big mistake. I think, you know, the adage of a problem shared is a problem halved. I think if we talked about it a bit more, then we could have smoothed things out a little bit more, you know. But I think because it was bottling up inside and I was kind of nearly afraid to admit it, that's kind of compounded it. And then I think at the end, when I said, look, I think, you know, I need to quit it, I think it was kind of coming out of the blue to you, because I had been kind of keeping it to myself, because I nearly didn't want to admit it, you know.
There were some telltales that kind of delivery speed started to drop down a bit. Now, it's, you know, that kind of thing. And that was kind of out of character to you, but then you were kind of contracted and you were doing everything in the evenings and at weekends and stuff. And I knew it was kind of hacky work, you know, like you were interfacing a lot with front-end HTML, which I know you're in love with. And so I had a suspicion something was coming up along. But and tell us this, so in our relationship as founders, because I was pretty much at that stage working full-time on growth and was probably exasperated and having meltdowns with you like on a daily basis, you know, because I'd go off and I'd come up with this idea, which was stupid usually, have to convince you into building it, you know, like it'd come to me like that. And then I'd be writing these mini business plans, you know, in our daily doc. I'd be like, think about this. And I would leave the idea till the very end and I'd build up this case the whole way down. But it was good because it was, because I got like 1,000 ideas in my head, you know, and 1,001 of them are shit, you know, and then maybe every 4 days, one of them is like, oh, that kind of makes sense, you know. So I as a result now, I do that myself before I do anything, you know. And so in kind of in my head, on saying that, I kind of thought we had a pretty open relationship, you know. We did the daily doc and then we used to do a weekly call. And then when we were working side by side, we did we do a weekly meet in the morning, or was that every morning or every 2 days in the coffee shop?
It kind of changed as things went along. It was daily and then it kind of went to weekly and stuff like that, you know.
Did you feel you couldn't talk to me about it, or did you feel if I mention it, then it's real and then we have to deal with it?
It was probably both. If you kind of say it out loud, that makes it real. And then I felt I wasn't just letting myself down, I was letting you down as well, you know. So it's, I guess it's a real mental thing, you know.
Yeah.
Just the problem was I shouldn't have kept it bottled up inside,
Yeah.
but I felt if I let it out, that would, you know, everything would be over. But kind of keeping it bottled up inside, was kind of the real issue, I think, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was frustration on your side because you weren't sure, you were kind of guessing, and then I didn't want to say, you know. So I think that brought in some friction where there was none before, you know.
Yeah.
We were always very open in our communication and stuff. Like, I'd have an idea, you tell me that was crazy. You'd have an idea, I tell you that was crazy. But that once, you know, it kind of, that communication wasn't as fast as it was before and open as it was before. And I think that was kind of ultimately the demise, you know. Looking back at it now, I can see that that's what it was, that from my side, because I was getting frustrated but not saying it.
Yeah.
That was the start of it, really, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, okay. Because it definitely came out of the blue to me. Like it was almost like a like a teenage romance, you know, like you like have a great Christmas and then you go and you buy her a Christmas present with like your whole life savings of like 20 quid and then she dumps you the next day. And you're like, that 7-day romance meant something to me, you know. I can't even remember our last kiss, all that kind of stuff. And so it kind of came out of the blue, but so when I was thinking about this, our talk today, I kind of thought it was very uncharacteristic of you, because kind of nothing kind of comes. Now you'd get frustrated and you'd blow up and you'd say your famous no when you used to get really frustrated about stuff. But such a catastrophic, like it was like two plates, you know. There was no missing it, you know. The world had split. And I remember that was pretty quick. That was like within a week, wasn't it? There was kind of, I think I'd met up with you outside your house and you were like going, oh, I'm just getting a little fatigued and frustrated. And then I probably went into sales mode.
Well, I think, you know, when you bottle something up, the pressure builds, right? And I think when it got to the point where it just exploded, and that was kind of it. And I think even just from my own headspace, I had bottled up for so long. I thought, look, this isn't good for me. It's too frustrating, you know. It's just time to call it quits. I'm not having the impact I want to have on the business, so I should just go and kind of, I'm not adding any value. I felt like I'm not adding any value to the business now, so I might as well just go and let somebody else, you know, take that momentum, you know.
Yeah. And after, did you have a tremendous, I assume you just had this tremendous sense of relief?
Well, I think the relief was just saying it, you know. And if anybody has a secret and it's been building up and you just finally it's out, even the worst secret in the world, you're going, well, now it's out. The relief of having it bottled up is gone. Yeah. So I think it was that, right? I was just relieved that I'd said it, you know.
Yeah.
So that's where that kind of relief came from. I think there was still a lot of frustration and depression around, well, this is it, you know, something you've put so much time and effort into it, and you're finally going, look, it's just not right for me now, you know. I can't have the impact on it, so it's just the right time for me to go. I think anybody that starts a business, that's one of the most depressing things you can do, is when you leave it, or, you know, you're going, it's just, I'm not having the impact I need to have on it, you know. So I think there was relief, but depression as well at the same time, you know. So the two mixed together, you know, a weird combination.
Yeah. And do you think about it much now? Like, I mean, I actually, on the post I was talking about our post relationship and kind of what we did after it, and I stuck up the my first post New Year's WhatsApp message I had got was from you saying, I've updated the product with the new tax regs. I was just going, well, there you go, you know. I mean, you literally can't get better proof than that. On New Year's Day, I was like driving down from I didn't even think about tax changes, hence why we were such a good team. But so do you lament on it much, or are you kind of like, oh, I'm in a good place now, I'm kind of like an outsider, I look in every now and again, how are things going, or are you like, just, it's like something else?
Well, I think I probably, like, as an experience, it was a great experience. You learn a lot about yourself when you do it, right? Because you're in a pressure cooker environment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You learn what you're good at and what you're not good at. Yeah. And I think I've learned I'm not good at running a business. That side of it, like the techie side, is good, but the running the business or something like that, I enjoyed it, parts of it and stuff like that, and it was interesting, but that's not my skill set. So I know that weakness in myself now, and I know other weaknesses as well. So I don't necessarily lament about it, because I think with some of the shortages I had, we would have needed more outside input or other things, that I couldn't make the contribution I needed to make to the business to make it grow, because I don't necessarily have those skills. And I think, I was trying to learn them, but then I was getting frustrated that, things we were trying, they weren't necessarily growing it the way I would, because when you write a piece of code and it works, that's it. It just works.
Yeah.
But it's terrible when you do a big growth campaign, and the growth campaign is good, but you don't grow as much as you'd hoped, So those sorts of things, I think I've learned about myself, what I'm good at, what I'm bad at, like what makes me happy, what makes me a little bit unsettled and, frustrated and stuff like that. So I think I got a lot out of it personally. But I think it's still the right choice for me to have made. I don't think that I'm necessarily, I thought I would be, but I don't necessarily think I am,
Yeah.
Once the product bit is gone, then the bits I have left aren't necessarily what you need in a co-founder, I think,
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're underselling yourself there a bit now. But I think it was actually a lot of stuff that was, I think, ultimately, I mean, the even talking recently when I was interviewing Enterprise Ireland, there was just no mentors. Like there was maybe 2 people who had, even now still, there are like maybe 4 people who've made money from online products in Ireland, like actually went out, I'm going to build this business, not like we're in some niche and, community online and then built a little product for it and sold it for $1 million or something like that. And I remember we seeked mentorship, and they would say that kind of classic thing, oh, why are you starting in Ireland? Manchester's the same size as Ireland. In actual fact, what they should have done was like punched both of us in the face and said, stop with Ireland and just build a product for California. That kind of way. And then I think that would have fixed an awful lot of issues. And we would have probably had to go, because the time zones are horrendous. But
the kind of the I think the area we picked as well was probably frustrating as well, that once there wasn't a lot of inventiveness that we could have. We could have some inventiveness, but not a huge amount. So, at a certain point, what the products do at the end, it's like if they do your tax returns or something, it's, you're fighting the battle of trying to tell people your product is much easier to use. But everybody tells that lie. It's true in our case, but it doesn't matter in our case, because some people have told the lie. No one believes you. So there was frustrations around the product that we could, that there were things we wanted to do that we couldn't do as well, to try and help make it more useful and more inviting. So just all those things kind of coupled together, I think because this like the space as well, if you look at a lot of other tools that you use for your business, you're using them because you want them. Like if you're using CRM or something like that, you're chasing customers, or you're doing this, you're doing that. Your accounts are kind of something that are hoisted on you that you have to do. And I think that's, people have a very they can have quite a negative relationship with accounts. So we're trying to overcome that hurdle first, and then tell them about our great product at the same time, So I think, some of the mentorship that we had, it was difficult for them to understand that space, that we're selling this product that people need, but they mightn't necessarily want, or they've heard the lies of other products and don't believe what we're telling them or something like that, So there were just a few kind of different things wrapped up. But I think if we were doing it again, we probably, with hindsight, it's 2020, right? So you're not going to make the same mistakes again that you made in the past, But looking forward, I think we thought it was the right place, we were starting in Ireland. We were from Ireland, but I think the attitude in Ireland to tax is quite negative. So very difficult to try and have a lot of growth in a product here.
Yeah, I think so.
And
then so our when I was looking back over how we kind of split up, it was kind of semi-built. If I remember the sequence right, we went out, met in the pub, which is a very Irish thing to do, but we're drinking non-alcohol beers, actually, if I remember right, because I was driving, so it didn't end up as most Irish pub meetings end up. And you were talking about feeling frustrated, and then I said, give it a bit of time or something like that. but then within 2 weeks, then that kind of decision was made. I remember I got the text, and then we had the call, and then I think I just took a bit of time. I think I went out for walks, because usually that's what I do, and then did my kind of pros and cons, and then kind of like a breakup was like, okay, well, there's no point trying to bring someone back in, because they're just going to be resentful, and if it's going to happen, it'll happen organically. They'll take 2 years out and travel Australia and then come back, and then you get a much better person, and they want to be in it. So I kind of thought our breakup was almost textbook perfect, as in we then met up in the pub. We kind of had a chat about what you wanted to get out of it, what I needed to get out of it. And then we kind of like a continuation of our partnership. We were both very amicable about it and went, I don't think, like this is our first time talking about it, of what happened, and then we just completely move forward with it. And we're like, okay, well, if that's the way you feel, that's the way you feel, and there's nothing I can do about that. These are the things I'm a bit exposed on here. Can you cover them? And then that was all agreed. And then we just continued on moving to the future. There was no fuck you mails shooting back and forth or drunk calls. You never loved me.
I think that's because it wasn't because we weren't getting on.
Yeah.
That I was leaving, it was the other sides of the business. And I was thinking, I can't add anything here now. It's just frustrating me. So I need to go. But there was no animosity between us. So I think that's why it was amicable. It was kind of back to the way things were before. Once the secret was out, we had that open communication where it was just like, look, it's not going to work for me. I know, because I think those 2 weeks, I'd been living with it for a year. So I kind of, after the 2 weeks, I knew, no, it's definitely the right decision for me to go now, whereas because you'd only just heard it, you were probably thinking maybe there's things we can do, but I kind of tried a few of those and they hadn't worked for me. So I kind of knew, but it was just about being honest. I think it depends on why you go into business. I remember I was on one of these start your own business courses, and the first class was everybody in the class sat down, and the guy went around and he said, why do you want to start your own business? And nearly everybody goes, for the money. And he goes, what do you want the money for? Nobody starts the business for money. You start it for something. You're going to use that money for something. There's a reason you're starting this that isn't about money. There's some other reason behind why you're starting the business. And for me, it was about, I just wanted to start a business that I could be proud of, that I could, make a big impact in. It wasn't about being a millionaire or anything like that. So I think the hangover of fighting over shares or I did this or I did that, there was none of that, because that's not why I started the business, and I'd like to see the business succeed, whether that's with me or without me now, right? I still want to see the business succeed because it's something I'm proud that I was a part of and proud that I helped build. But the reasons I started the business, they were kind of gone. So there was no point in the animosity, So I think that's why it was still amicable, because what I'd kind of gotten out of it, what I wanted to get out of it. So then that was it,
And how did you resolve that? Because I often think in any of the other businesses I've had where they've split up, actually, any time I went out with a girl and I split up with her, she pretty much met her husband, the next boyfriend. So like maybe your next startup, you're going to be like on Forbes, probably top 50 under 50 at this stage. But
yeah. It's a new category.
Maybe I like that jinx. I'm like a weird rabbit's foot, But God, what was I going to say to you? But yeah, so any of the, I remember the first time I went into business, Guy, and we were just on different planes. It's very good friend of mine, and just at two different stages in our life. Or we wanted two different things out of the business. That was it. I wanted to get out of my job, and he was in a good job. And I remember there's always this kind of, particularly when there isn't, like if you can be bought out of a business, then you can justify that much better. Well, I made 2 million out of that, and and all of that kind of stuff. But when the business isn't making that kind of money, then I always think there's this, you're always trying to balance your risk and your work and then the reward, okay, which doesn't really exist in startup life, okay. And whether you're deluded about how much effort or how much impact you had on the business, or whether you're genuine, you know, and you worked ferocious, you didn't take any salary out of it, and in actual fact then contracted to supplement the company and stuff like that. How did you reconcile that in your head? Because I remember when I was talking to you, I was like, do you want to still keep a piece of the business? And I still think you should do. And all of that, hence why I haven't filed anything yet, because it just doesn't seem fair in my head. It just doesn't seem fair. And so how did you reconcile that? I mean, of anyone who could have gone, I'm keeping my 50% of the shares and go fuck yourself because I've put like 7 serious, you know, and also people forget you're giving up a salary of let's say 100 grand a year. So if you're like 7 years in business, that's nearly half. That's nearly €1 million you've pumped into that business in lost earnings. I've no doubt Louise reminds you about it the whole time while you're holidaying in Wales.
I think there are other things you can get out of starting your own business, right? I mean, a lot of, like when we looked at the stats, a lot of businesses that start fail, you know? So I think if you're starting a business, you need to be somewhat realistic about it. The chances of it being the $1 billion business are quite slim. So I don't think you can hang your hat on that being the outcome that you have to achieve, right? I always knew when I was, you know, when we were starting this off, that even if it failed, I'd get a lot out of it, right? A lot of experience. I'd learn a lot about myself. I'd learn a lot about business that I didn't know before. I'd learn lots of things, right? And in terms of the shares, you know, what's the point in holding on to shares and you're just, you know, then that means you can't get any other investment because you've got this person that's sitting on all these shares and you're dragging down the business and you're, you know, just out of spite. Well, what's the point of that? Like, you know, that's not fair to you. That's not fair to the business. I'd like to see it go on. I still think it's a great product, you know,
great product.
The lack of growth is still astonishes and annoys me, you know. So I don't want to be the barrier. You put a lot of work into it too. Everybody's put a lot of work into it. So I don't think I should, you know, just because I started the business doesn't mean I should. That's not everything that's gone into that business is what I've done. Lots of other people have contributed to it. You've contributed a huge amount to it. So why should I have some kind of death grip on the business that I'm going to hang on to it for, you know, and make sure no one can get anything out of it? I'd rather see the business succeed, you know. So because that'd give me a lot of pride as well. I think I helped start that business, you know.
Well, you did technically start it.
Yeah.
Just to hang your honor.
I think it depends. I think it depends on what drives people, you know. So that the financial aspect wasn't the end goal for me. So I think that's why it was easier to step away from the business, you know.
Yeah. Okay. And if you were, so we'll wrap this up now because I know you're on a holiday and your good lady's probably pacing outside. Or there's a smell of bacon. There's a smell of pork somewhere. You'll be gone. And so tell us this. Do you think because I actually thought the way we kind of split up and then continued our relationship, like, I mean, you're still kind of involved in it. And we had made an agreement on that you'd invoice me once a month. That hasn't happened yet. You know, I'm assuming there's going to be some enormous invoice going to come in the door now. And, but I thought like our breakup and then the post breakup all went unbelievably well. I mean, testament to that is we're still laughing at each other's jokes, you know, right now. And, but do you think looking back, you'd have done anything different, or like what advice? So if somebody's listening to this, like what advice would you say to them? So we've done a kind of a workbook for founders, you know, to kind of, they fill out and then they come together and it works out, you know, where you have the same place in life, you look for the same things out. It's just kind of a general framework that actually Killian, our solicitor, had suggested. What do you think would be your advice to people now if they were looking to go into business with one another?
I think the biggest thing is communication, right? I mean, I think ours worked well because we communicated with each other a lot, you know, and things started going wrong when we kind of stopped communicating, right? When I stopped communicating, I was getting frustrated. If I was doing it again now, I would make sure that bit didn't happen, because you need to keep those lines of communication open, because if you're not, and then you start acting strange and the other person doesn't know what's going on. That's when tension and frustration rises. So if you can just communicate with your founders, you know, make sure that they know what's going on. Everybody has the same doubts, right? You know, there's the great highs and lows of starting a business, right? Everybody's going to be depressed at times, and that's when you need your co-founders the most, that you can say to them and they can buoy you up, or kind of, you know, look on the positive side, or give you some encouragement, or just even have a chat about it, you know. So definitely, if the one piece of advice I would give is just make sure you communicate all the time, you know, because that's one of the most important things with the co-founder. You just have to communicate with each other, you know.
I suppose a good way to do that would be to build into maybe your monthly review at talk. Like I remember hearing Disney to criticize stuff. He used to have, so he'd have like a blue hat and a red hat, and they'd go into the blue room or the red room, and the blue room was you were only allowed to make positive criticisms about it. Like, oh, that looks great, that looks brilliant. And then when you went into the red room, it was like you were invited to be negative. So people were expecting it, so they didn't take it personally. So almost something like that you could build in, where you had like the pissed off report, and then everybody puts down what they're pissed off about once a month, and then that gives you an opportunity to say it without offending or being attacked, maybe.
Well, remember when we were doing some of the like user surveys and a lot of the different things, we would ask people, particularly if we're trying to get feedback on a product or an idea or something like that, you'd always ask them first, you know, what are the 3 positive things, you know, what are the 3 best things about this thing, do you think? And they'd tell you. And then afterwards you would ask them, what are the 3 negative things you would say about it? And, you know, after having asked them for the positives, people feel they're allowed to tell you the negatives because they've just told you good things about it, and now they're more willing to tell you the bad stuff. And I think that communication is nearly more important. You can learn more from maybe sometimes the criticisms that people have. So especially even in your own business, like a state of the business review, that you kind of like that you kind of say what's going positive first, but then you kind of, you know, say what's negative as well, so that it doesn't sound as bad. You're not just negative because you say some positive stuff first, and that allows you to talk about the negative stuff, because the negative stuff is the stuff that's going to get you down, right? That's going to build up those barriers between co-founders and stuff. So they're the things you really need to talk about, you know.
And also, if my head hadn't been up my ass so much, I might have spotted it a bit earlier and talked to you about it, you know. So there's 2 sides to that, Johnny. You know, you need the whole idea of a co-founder is you're meant to read into that. Like I often say, your co-founder doesn't just end there. It continues on with his family and his life or her life, you know. So you have to take in to lots of things, you know. So yeah, sorry I missed that now. I should have been more aware of that. Okay. Well, listen, thanks so much for that. I'm watching the screen I'm looking at, and I've just finished watching that Unabomber Netflix thing of the guy who like lives in the cabin in the woods, and he's like got the beard and the fleece and all the rest.
All I need is the hat now and the glasses.
Yeah. And lots of maths equations on the wall and stuff like that. But anyway, look, I know you're sick and you're on a break with Lou at the moment, so I hope that all goes well now. I know that's
cool.
And thanks very much for doing this, and I'll talk to you soon.
See you later.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.